Royal crews were already clamping new cylinders to Felicienne Orr's grounded weather balloons when she drove her shoulder against the launch rail and locked the brake. Above the observatory yard, a white balloon strained against its tether. A royal weather dragon banked through high air. Lightning snapped from cloud to wingtip. The balloon flashed crimson. Red vapor bloomed inside the silk envelope, veins of fire pulsing from crown to seam. Felicienne's breath stopped. Who refilled that balloon? No one answered quickly enough. The gas line hissed at her feet. Farmers and festival workers stood beyond the rail with crates of grain and children's flags, trusting the royal harvest forecast she had refused to certify. Felicienne shut the valve with both hands. Clear the lower yard. No one stands beneath a red balloon. Weather Minister Castlemorn lifted a brass clipboard. The color is harmless additive. You closed this observatory over tint. I grounded these balloons because the density was wrong and the flame prism turned yellow. And His Majesty ordered harvest, launches restored. Then Severan Holtwick came through the observatory gate in a dark charcoal flight coat embroidered with red gold dragons, storm-gray eyes fixed on the crimson balloon. He was 26, deep bronze skin, clean commanding face, black hair tied with a silver flight clasp, a thin lightning scar along his left temple. Beautiful enough to unsettle her, dangerous enough to sign ruin into policy. Felicienne hated that both could be true. "Observer Orr," he said. "Minister Morn reports you mistook approved color additive for danger. Stable lifting gas does not turn red when dragon lightning touches it." She pointed to the balloon. "That mixture is industrial, inflammable, and heavier than the gas I tested last week." Castle smiled. "Fear before harvest season spreads faster than storms. Fire spreads faster." Severan looked from her hand on the valve to the farmers behind the rope. "The kingdom needs upper air readings before tomorrow's cutting. Grounding all balloons risks panic. Launching them risks burning fields while calling it calm." The red balloon groaned overhead. Its tether twitched against the rail. Felicienne had one clean sample line at her feet and one loose balloon above a crowd. Preserve the cylinder before Castle's men could replace it, or stop the balloon before it tore free and carried fire toward the harvest terraces. She chose the living people first. "Bryn," she called to her youngest observer, "seal the cylinder nozzle. Wax. Time. My mark. Your mark. Do not let it leave the yard." Then she grabbed the emergency vent cord and climbed the launch frame. 2 guards moved to pull her down. Severan raised one hand. Let her work. Not trust. Not repair. A useful pause. Felicienne reached the first brace as the silk envelope pulsed red again. Heat pricked through her gloves. Below, Castle ordered crews to keep filling the remaining balloons. "Stop those valves," she shouted. Castle's voice hardened. "By royal launch authority, the observatory is suspended for obstruction. Continue the forecast preparation." A clerk pressed an official notice against the rail. Felicienne Orr, upper air observer, relieved of launch command pending ministerial review. For a heartbeat, the paper blurred. Her observatory, instruments, and warning network for every farm below the ridge closed when farmers needed them most. Severan's jaw tightened. "Castle, I did not order her removed from the equipment. You ordered the launch restored, Majesty. Authority must be clear." Felicienne hooked her boot around the brace and pulled the vent cord. The balloon shuddered. Red gas bled upward through the safety sleeve. Thin at first, then too fast. A spark snapped inside the envelope. "Down!" she screamed. The seam burst. Crimson flame fell in ribbons over the launch yard. Workers scattered. One farmer dragged a child beneath a stone awning. Felicienne swung from the brace, slammed into the platform, and rolled as red fire licked across the rail where her hand had been. Severan crossed the yard and stamped out a burning tether with his boot. He moved well under danger. That only sharpened the injury. He could act fast. He had chosen late. Felicienne pushed herself upright. Weather dragons away from the fumes, wing beats high, not low. Low beats will drive flame into the grain wagons. A slate blue dragon above them banked hard, obeying her raised hand signal before any royal horn sounded. Its wings pushed smoke upward. Red vapor thinned. Bryn crouched beside the cylinder, white-faced but alive, sealing the nozzle with shaking hands. Castle seized the moment. The observer's illegal venting caused the tear. Felicienne turned, smoke in her dark auburn braid, brass altimeter compass ticking at her waist. No. The gas turned red before I touched the vent. Severan looked at the torn balloon, the scorched rail, then at her. Can you prove which cylinder caused it? Not from the color. Her voice steadied around the truth. Red tells us what it is, not where it came from. A sharp metallic crack cut through the yard. The second balloon, still filling under Castle's cruise, tore loose from the launch rail and rose burning red toward the harvest fields below. The second balloon climbed crookedly, dragging a torn tether that whipped sparks over the observatory wall. Felicienne ran after it. Below the ridge, harvest wagons had stalled on the switchback road, canvas covers bright against the barley terraces. The burning balloon drifted toward them with red vapor leaking from its lower seam. "Open the east smoke gate," Felicienne shouted. "No horns. Hand signals only. The dragons are charged." Bryn looked up from the sealed cylinder. "Your authority is suspended." "My lungs are not." She snatched the brass signal paddles and sprinted to the overlook. The slate blue weather dragons circled above the yard, cloud-white eyes narrowed against the fumes. Felicienne crossed both paddles, then swept them upward. High wing beat. "Lift smoke. Do not drive it down." The dragon obeyed. Its long wings struck the air above the loose balloon, pushing the red burn backward from the grain wagons. Flame wavered, thinned, and curled away from the road. A farmer stumbled from behind a wagon with his sleeve burning. Felicienne dropped the paddles and ran downhill. Heat rolled over the terraces. Red gas fell in strips, not like ordinary fire, but like silk unraveling in the air. Bright and hungry wherever it touched dry straw. She tore off her storm blue coat and smothered the farmer's sleeve. "Roll your shoulder. Do not breathe toward the red smoke." Severan reached the road a breath behind her. He lifted the wagon tongue enough for 2 workers to pull a crying child free. Felicienne hated the relief that struck her. He had caused this danger by trusting Castle, but he did not stand decorative inside it. "Majesty," she said without looking at his face, "clear every person below the second terrace. Then ground the western line before Castle fills another envelope." His mouth tightened at the command in her voice. Then he turned. "Clear the second terrace. Western line grounded until inspected." Castle arrived with soot on his cuffs and fury under his polish. "One line, Majesty. Not the fleet. We still need harvest readings." "You need readings that do not burn people," Felicienne said. She returned to the yard with the sealed cylinder under Bryn's arm and half the farm road watching. If Castle wanted her to look hysterical, she would give them procedure. "Density bell on the stone table," she told Bryn. A scent clock beside it, prism lamp shielded. Castle's smile reappeared. "A performance? A demonstration?" Felicienne opened the density bell and released a measured breath of gas from the preserved nozzle into the glass chamber. The indicator should have risen clean and pale if the cylinder held stable lifting gas. Instead, the bead dragged low, sluggish as wet lead. Murmurs moved through the workers. "Too heavy," Felicienne said. A weather balloon filled with this climbs slowly, sits inside charged air longer, and meets dragon lightning where it should already be above the strike layer. Castle tapped his clipboard. Additive changes weight. Not enough to do this. She lit the flame-safe prism behind its shield and allowed the smallest testing spark. The vapor flashed yellow at the core, then licked red along the glass. Bryn flinched. Felicienne did not. Inflammable industrial mixture, she said. Not stable lifting gas. A woman from the wagons lifted her burned hand. Then why did they launch it over us? No one answered. Severan looked at Felicienne as if her numbers had struck harder than accusation. Respect began there, not warm enough to trust, but solid enough to stand on. Castle stepped closer. The retained sample has been handled by an observer already removed for obstruction. Ministry chemists will examine it. No, Felicienne capped the nozzle. This sample stays with 2 witness marks. Your mark and your assistant's mark are hardly neutral. Severan said, add mine. Felicienne looked at him then. His storm gray eyes were unreadable, his jaw still marked with ash from the road. The attraction she resented returned in a sharper form, attached now to usefulness. That made it more dangerous. You may witness the seal, she said. You may not hold the cylinder. He accepted the boundary with a single nod. Then I will witness. Castle's expression cooled. Majesty, indulging her methods will alarm every farmer before cutting. The farmers are already alarmed, Severan said, because red fire fell on them. Felicienne wrote the time, cylinder number, pressure, bell reading, prism reaction, wind direction, and dragon lightning exposure on a slate. Then she examined the brass cap under her hand lens. Her pulse changed. The seal bore the observatory crest, but the wax line was wrong. A clean crescent cut hid beneath newer brass dust. The stamp had been lifted and pressed back after delivery. This cylinder was opened after it left the northern filling station. Severan's gaze sharpened. You can tell that from wax? From wax, stamp pressure, and dust trapped where dust cannot fall unless the seal was broken. She lifted the cap so the farmers could see the thin cut. Someone resealed it after delivery. Across the yard, Castle's nearest clerk slid 1 page from the intake ledger and folded it into his sleeve. Felicienne saw the movement. So did Severan. But before either could cross the yard, the clerk bolted toward the ministry wagon with the northern filling station seal book under his arm. Felicienne caught the clerk before the ministry wagon reached the lower gate. Not by speed. He was longer-legged and frantic. She cut across the launch yard, vaulted the scorched rail, and dropped in front of the wagon horses with both arms spread. The driver hauled the team back. The clerk slammed into the wagon step, clutching the northern filling station sealbook to his chest. Severan arrived behind him with 2 guards. Return the book, the king said. The clerk looked past him to Castle Morn. Castle's face held perfect injured dignity. Your Majesty, ministry records cannot be passed into the hands of a suspended observer. Felicienne's burnt glove stuck to the wagon rail where red gas had melted the leather. This seal book became evidence when your clerk ran with it, or when you frightened him. Severan held out his hand. The clerk surrendered the book, but Severan did not open it. He turned and offered its spine first to Felicienne. She did not take it. His storm gray eyes lowered to her face, then to the blackened glove. Your boundary? My evidence is already attacked as biased. If I hold that book first, Castle will say I altered it. A small silence changed the yard. Severan looked at the farmers, the workers, the smoke-stained observers. Then the book will be sealed on the stone table witnessed by 5 people and opened only after Observer Orr names the method. Castle's jaw tightened. That was not trust. It was the first shape of room. Felicienne chose her witnesses. Bryn, the burned farmer's wife who had seen the balloon fall, an old field clerk from the barley cooperative, a royal guard not assigned to Castle, and Severan, who signed last without touching the pages. Only then did Felicienne speak where everyone could hear. "I will cooperate with royal access under conditions." Cassel gave a soft laugh. A suspended employee dictating terms. A weather observer preserving lives. She faced Severan. "You may open gates, command guards away from evidence, and require ministers to produce records. You may not touch gas samples, shorten tests, soften warnings for ceremony, move witnesses out of my hearing, or ask me for trust before repair." The words landed harder because her voice did not rise. Severan accepted them in public. Agreed. His agreement warmed nothing. It steadied the ground beneath the next step. Castle adapted before sunset. By the time Felicienne reached the observatory archive, the launch ledgers had vanished from the cabinet. Cylinder tags from the Western line lay in a neat tray, all polished to clean. The wind desk was locked under a strip of red ministry wax, stamped military supply privilege. Bryn swore under his breath. Felicienne lifted one tag with tweezers. "Too clean is also evidence." Severan stood at the door, not over her shoulder. "What do you need opened?" "The northern filling yard." Castle's brows rose. "That yard serves military airships. It is not under observatory command." "No," Felicienne said. "It is under yours." The filling yard smelled of cold metal, oil, and rain. Rows of empty cradles showed where stable gas cylinders should have rested before harvest launches. Instead, chalk numbers marked gaps on the stone floor. A woman in a grease-dark apron stepped from behind a wagon axle, wiping her hands on a rag. She had shorn, silver-brown hair, strong arms, and the wary eyes of someone already counting what truth might cost. "Orla Dane," Felicienne said. "You service the filling pumps." "I did," Orla answered. "Until this morning." Castle moved sharply. Mechanic Dane was dismissed for poor inventory discipline. Orla laughed once without humor. "I was dismissed for refusing to grind off batch marks." Severan took one step forward. Felicienne raised two fingers without looking at him. He stopped. The restraint mattered more than his anger. Orla watched that exchange, then pointed to the empty cradles. Stable lifting gas came in before dawn, full royal grade. Minister's seal diverted 8 cylinders to military airship wagons. Those balloons at your observatory were filled from gray industrial cylinders relabeled Weather Reserve. "Did you see the relabeling?" Felicienne asked. "I saw the caps changed. I saw fresh brass dust under old observatory stamps. I kept one shaving." She pulled a folded cloth from inside her apron. A crescent of bright brass lay inside, scraped from beneath a resealed cap. Castle's voice went flat. "A dismissed mechanic carrying loose scrap proves nothing. It proves method when matched to the cut seal," Felicienne said. "Not the whole crime." She would not let magic or anger overreach the proof. Severan looked at the empty cylinder cradles. "Where did the stable gas go?" Orla nodded toward the far shed. Inside, under canvas stamped for the Royal Air Fleet, stood 8 blue cylinders with white harvest-grade neckbands. Their batch code matched the missing observatory delivery. Severan's face changed, as if the numbers had become a blade. Felicienne read the contract tag wired to the first cylinder. "Royal Military Airship Readiness, approved by King Severan Holtwick." Castle spread his hands. "Majesty, the border fleet required reserve lift. The observer's fear made surplus available." Felicienne turned from the tag to Severan. "My fear did not sign this." "No," he said, voice stripped quiet. "I did." Across the yard, thunder moved over the Harvest Valley, and every unverified balloon still tied at the observatory began to pull against its lines. Thunder pressed the northern filling yard flat with shadow. At the observatory ridge, the unverified balloons pulled harder against their lines, fat white bodies shivering as charged wind climbed out of the Harvest Valley. Felicienne watched their motion, not their size. A safe balloon should climb clean, tug steady, and rise above the strike layer before storm wake gathered. These dragged sideways like sacks of wet wool. "Ground every line," she said. Castlemorn's voice cut through the first rain. "You already have one line grounded." "Then I am correcting your shortage of caution." Severan looked at the balloons, then at the airship's cylinders under canvas. "Ground them all until Observer Orr finishes her tests." Castle bowed as if obedience had no cost, but his eyes followed the wind desk key at his belt. Felicienne saw it. "I need the wind records." "The wind desk is sealed under military supply privilege," Castle said. Severan held out his hand. "The key." For a moment, ministerial power and royal guilt stood facing each other. Castle surrendered it. Felicienne did not thank Severan. She took Bryn, Orla, the sealed sample, and 3 suspect cylinders to the stone testing room, where old storm glass rattled in the windows. The first cylinder failed the density bell. The second sank lower. The third carried the same wrong heaviness, but bore a perfect cap. Too perfect. Its wax smoothed until tool marks vanished. "Different cylinders," Bryn said. "Same gas." "Same replacement," Orla answered. Felicienne set the ascent clock beside 3 small test bladders, each filled with a measured breath from a different cylinder and released inside the tall draft shaft. The true harvest-grade control, taken from Orla's hidden airship store, rose straight to the 3rd mark in 11 seconds. The suspect bladders lagged, swayed, and stalled below the 2nd. Felicienne wrote the numbers twice. This is why the balloons stayed inside Dragon Lightning height. Castle entered with 2 ministry chemists. One held Felicienne's retained vial from the first cylinder, now streaked bright red even without lightning. "There," Castle said softly. "Color additive. Mishandled by panic, then dramatized as danger." The room cooled around Felicienne. Bryn's face went bloodless. "I sealed that." "You sealed a contaminated interpretation," Castle replied. Severan stepped forward, but Felicienne lifted one hand. Her boundary had to hold most when anger wanted a sword. She studied the vial, then the slate beneath it. The red stain had collected along the cork rim, not through the vapor line. Dye clung to the outside wax where Bryn's seal had cracked during transport from yard to testing room. "After collection," she said. Castle's smile thinned. "Convenient." "No, sequential." She placed the vial beside the density slate. The balloon flashed red under Dragon Lightning before this vial ever reached the testing room. The density bell failed before the dye appeared. The ascent bladders stall without dye in them. Your added color explains color only after evidence existed. It does not explain weight, volatility, or ignition. Orla pointed to a red smear beneath the ministry chemist's thumb. "And it does not explain that." The chemist hid his hand too late. Severan's voice went low. "Remove him from the room. Do not touch the vial." Felicienne felt the order like a guarded door opening beside her, not in front of her. They unlocked the wind desk as rain began tapping the roof. The official logs showed mild upper wind, safe ascent windows, and clear festival advisories. Felicienne laid her ascent numbers over the launch times. Corrected for the slow rise, every balloon had remained 200 feet lower than the logs claimed when Dragon patrols crossed the charged layer. "That changes the forecast," Severan said. "It changes the warning," Felicienne corrected. "Forecasts describe weather. Warnings protect people." She spread crop warning maps across the table. Barley terraces, orchard basins, late-cut wheat fields. 3 districts had received softened warnings yesterday morning, all downgraded from red hail risk to yellow watch. Bren pulled a hidden barometer strip from beneath the old desk rail, where observers had always tucked backup readings away from ministry edits. Its ink line plunged during the same hour the official log flattened. Castle's expression did not move. That was its own confession. Severan looked older for one breath, though still every inch the young king whose signature had moved safe gas into war storage. Border scouts reported enemy airship drills last month. Castle told me panic would empty fields and weak air readiness would invite raids. I chose readiness. Felicienne folded the barometer strip with care. You chose ceremony over warning. I chose what I thought would prevent fear. Fear is not the enemy of a harvest. False calm is. He absorbed that without defense, which was almost worse. A defensive man could be dismissed. A listening king became something she had to judge honestly. Then she found the final column. Insurance rating adjustments had been entered beside each softened district, not after damage. Before. Felicienne read the dates once, then again. Late Barley North Slope, Orchard Basin, Wheat Marsh Road, all had downgraded warnings. All had increased crop loss coverage through Allied agents hours before the storm risk was softened. Orla leaned over the map. That is not weather work. No, Felicienne said, marking the 3 districts in red pencil. That is profit. Outside, the first harvest bell began to ring from the valley, not for celebration, but warning. The harvest bell kept ringing, while Castle Morn used the sound as proof against her. By the time Felicienne reached the observatory steps, ministry guards had crossed their pikes before the door. A fresh notice covered the old brass plate that bore her name. Royal Weather Observatory closed to suspended personnel until festival clearance. Castle stood beneath it with rain shining on his perfect coat. The valley hears a warning bell because you have taught farmers to fear color. The valley hears a warning bell because your downgraded maps told them to keep cutting under charged hail wind. Enough. He extended a parchment toward her. Approve festival weather clearance, and I will allow you supervised access to your instruments. Severan came up behind Felicienne, wet hair dark against his temple scar. She will not be coerced into clearance. Castle turned the parchment so the royal seal showed. His Majesty's festival proceeds under the launch restoration order already signed. Unless Observer Orr certifies danger by approved ministry process, the ceremony stands. Felicienne did not look at Severan because the seal on that order was his. The injury changed shape. It was no longer only that he had believed Castle. His signature still opened doors to danger and closed doors against her hands. She stepped back from the pikes. Then my proof leaves with the weather. Bren swallowed. We are locked out. Of walls, Felicienne said, not of sky. They carried what they could. The hidden barometer strip folded in oilcloth, density slates, Orla's brass shaving, copied batch codes, and 3 cylinder tags Felicienne had hidden inside her glove before Castle's guards searched the trays. Severan followed them down the ridge, but not close enough to crowd her. I can break the lock. You can, she said. And Castle will say the king and the suspended observer stormed an archive after evidence turned inconvenient. His silence told her he understood. The first field station was a sheep shed with a cracked vane nailed to its roof. Farmers filled it before Felicienne could ask. Burned sleeves, hail-bent barley, a child coughing red smoke into a cloth. They did not need speeches. They needed a warning that arrived before damage. Felicienne spread the crop map across an overturned feed bin. Who received yellow watch? Hands rose from 3 districts. Who saw hail clouds before noon? More hands. Who received red warning? No hands. A tenant farmer named Pell Marwick stepped forward. Bell from the Capitol rang after the north slope was already flat. Felicienne wrote the time. Who heard Dragon Patrol thunder before the warning bell? Everyone, Pell said. We thought that meant the Crown knew. Severan's face tightened, but he stayed behind the chalk line Bren drew on the shed floor for evidence work. The small obedience hurt and helped at once. At the second field station, the cost worsened. 2 official win pages had been replaced before Felicienne could seal them. The ink was fresh, the numbers mild, the paper edges uncreased. Bren's voice broke. Those were not the pages I logged. Castle had not needed to win every argument. Severan's order had given him time to replace the record. Felicienne pressed both hands flat on the table until rage became method. Then we do not use them as truth. We use them as replacement. Orla compared the copied batch codes to hidden tags found beneath a grain tarp. Same reseal dust, same false reserve mark. A farm clerk produced wagon counts showing gray industrial cylinders delivered to observatory crews, while blue harvest-grade gas never arrived at the ridge. Another woman, face streaked with soot, had kept a pocket diary of actual wind gusts because her husband flew grain kites. Felicienne built the day from scraps Castle had not controlled. Barometer drop, farmer timing, Dragon Patrol sound, ascent failure, cylinder weight, burned field edge, and missing warning. Severan watched the pattern grow. It should not take ruined fields to make the record honest. No, she said. It should take an observer's warning. He flinched, and she let him. Outside, royal horns began rehearsing the festival procession despite smoke above the barley. Castle's messengers rode from farm to farm, calling the morning damage isolated, urging attendance, promising insurance assessors would handle verified losses. At the Marsh Road station, an old widow refused to sit. Her wheat lay broken behind her in strips where hail had crossed exactly the softened warning zone. They sold calm, she said, then sold us permission to survive it. She handed Felicienne a folded note from an insurance agent. The paper smelled of horse sweat and rain. It offered increased crop loss coverage for Marsh Road wheat, valid if accepted before official storm warning. The receipt was dated hours before the ministry delayed the red warning. Felicienne felt the room go very still. Severan read the date over her shoulder without crossing the line. Before the downgrade? Before the public warning, she said, after someone knew the storm risk. He looked toward the smoke-hazed festival road. Castle will launch in front of the whole valley before this reaches a court. Felicienne folded the receipt into oilcloth beside the barometer strip. Then I will reach the festival first. The widow caught her wrist with a burned hand. Make them hear it before the sky falls again. Felicienne reached the Royal Harvest Road before the procession drums did. Castle had made the festival beautiful in the way frightened officials made danger beautiful. White pennants along the barley lanes, gold ribbons on grain wagons, polished launch rails before the terraced fields, and 6 weather balloons swelling fat above the crowd. 3 already wore the faint inner blush she feared. Farmers stood close because royal stewards had called the morning fire isolated. Children held paper dragons. Injured workers watched from carts, bandaged and silent. Felicienne climbed the stone marker at the field edge. Clear the launch ground. Move uphill and west. No one stands under the balloons. Castle's voice rolled through a speaking cone from the ceremonial platform. Observer Orr has no authority here. Her alarm already disrupted the morning harvest. A murmur moved against her. Felicienne lifted the widow's insurance receipt in one hand and her red warning paddle in the other. Your warning was delayed after the storm was known. Your gas was replaced after delivery. If those balloons meet dragon lightning, red fire will fall. Castle turned to the guards. Remove her before she starts a stampede. 2 guards crossed the field. Severin arrived between them and Felicienne, not facing her, facing his own soldiers. Ash and rain marked his charcoal flight coat. No hand on her. Castle lowered the cone. Majesty, if you indulge this interruption, the valley will believe the crown cannot command its own weather. The crown cannot command gas not to burn. Severin turned just enough for Felicienne to hear him without taking over. What do you need? Clear the eastern fall zone. Weather dragons high. Open every emergency vent from the upwind side only. And if I signal red, cut the tethers away from the crowd, not toward the granaries. His eyes held hers for one charged breath. You heard Observer Orr. Her signals outrank ceremony. Castle's polished control cracked. Majesty. Now, that single word gave her space, not forgiveness. Felicienne ran. Bryn met her at the first rail with a wrench. Orla was already beneath a cylinder cradle, reading marks upside down. The brass caps were warm. Too much pressure, Orla said. They overfilled them to make the climb look clean. They will tear lower, Felicienne answered. The sky answered first. A royal weather dragon swept above the field, slate blue wings shining under storm charge. Lightning crawled along its pale horn veins. The first balloon flashed crimson, then the second, then the third. A collective sound rose from the crowd, disbelief turning into terror. Vapor webbed inside the envelopes, bright as blood through white silk. Seams glowed. Tethers snapped hard. West, Felicienne shouted, slashing both paddles. All people west. Bryn and 2 farm boys opened the first emergency vent. Red gas screamed upward, but the envelope split along a hot seam. Burning vapor fell in ribbons over the ceremonial grain arch. The arch caught. So did the dry straw on the granary roof beyond it. Felicienne signaled the dragons higher. 3 weather dragons banked together, long wings beating above the smoke, to pull fumes away from the people below. 1 young dragon dipped too low, recoiled from the red fumes, and nearly drove flame into the barley carts. No low wing beats, Felicienne screamed. Tail left, climb. It obeyed the train signal, not the royal horns blaring confusion from the platform. A farmer broke from the moving crowd to free a horse tangled in a ribboned cart. A strip of red gas fell over his back. He went down without a sound. Felicienne dropped the paddles and ran through sparks. Heat bit her cheeks and hands. She rolled him under the cart shadow, tore open his burning vest, and packed wet festival bunting against the wound. Breathe sideways, she told him. Do not breathe red. His wife sobbed his name from beyond the rope. Cassamy. Felicienne looked up at him through smoke. She had never hated a calm voice more. Guards moved again, emboldened by the accusation. Severin crossed in front of them. His storm steel boot came down on a fallen tether, still spitting flame. Any guard who arrests the woman keeping this field alive answers to me personally. For the first time, his danger faced the right direction. Felicienne felt it and refused to soften. Cancel the launch, all lines. Severin drew the red-gold dragon pin from his coat and snapped it in half, breaking the festival command seal before the crowd. The Royal Harvest launch is canceled. All weather dragons answer Observer Orr until the field is clear. Silence struck harder than thunder. Then people moved because command and truth had finally aligned. Felicienne sent the high dragons over the granary roof, using wing wash to lift smoke while bucket lines formed below. She ordered the remaining balloons vented in sequence, upwind to downwind, with every cylinder cap witnessed before removal. She marked each pressure gauge herself. Severin carried water, hauled burned rail, and repeated her signals to officers without changing a word. Castle vanished from the platform. Felicienne, noticed too late. The last balloon collapsed safely across an empty lane, its silk scorched red but no longer burning. The farmer with the back wound was alive, though his wife's hands shook as she held the wet cloth in place. The granary roof smoked black. Half the ceremonial barley lay trampled, and every face in the field had seen red gas fall. Beginning was not victory. It was only the end of pretending. "Felicienne," Orla called from behind the weather tent. Her voice had gone strange. Felicienne followed past the torn pennants and found blue cylinders stacked under military canvas, hidden behind Castle's abandoned platform. White harvest-grade neckbands gleamed through the smoke. She wiped soot from the first batch code. It matched the missing observatory gas. Felicienne kept her hand on the blue cylinder while the festival field smoked around her. "Do not move these," she told Orla. "Do not polish them. Do not wipe ash from the neckbands." Orla planted herself between the military canvas and the nearest guard. Severan came through torn pennants with soot across one cheek and his broken festival pin in his fist. He saw the harvest-grade bands. He saw Felicienne's face. "Castle," he said. "Castle's system," Felicienne corrected. "If we name one man before the system speaks, he will hide inside your order." That struck him. She climbed the platform Castle had abandoned and faced farmers, weather crews, airship officers, ministry clerks, and dragons circling above red smoke. No one leaves with a cylinder, ledger, warning map, or insurance packet. Stay and witness. A guard began to object. Severan cut across him. "The field is under emergency warning command. Observer Orr decides custody." Felicienne held up the blackened pressure slate. 3 festival balloons turned red only after dragon lightning charged the air. That proves unsafe industrial gas. It does not tell us who put it there. Castle emerged near the granary lane between 2 ministry clerks. He had changed coats. His hands were clean. "Majesty," he called. "Your military readiness contract removed surplus gas. Your launch order restored ceremony. If blame exists, it is royal urgency, not weather administration." The field went silent. Severan looked at Felicienne. "Continue." She placed 2 cylinders side by side, one blue harvest, grayed from behind Castle's tent, one gray industrial cylinder from the observatory line. Orla Dane serviced the filling pumps. Orla stepped onto the platform. Stable lifting gas came in before dawn. Minister Seal sent 8 harvest-grade cylinders to military airship wagons. Gray industrial cylinders were capped with weather reserve marks. I was dismissed for refusing to grind off batch marks. Castle smiled. A dismissed mechanic and a suspended observer. Felicienne set Orla's brass shaving beside Bren's resealed cap. Dismissal does not change metal. This shaving fits beneath the lifted observatory stamp. The seal was cut after delivery, then pressed back with fresh brass dust under the wax. Bren raised the witness slate. The sealed Northern Book has 5 marks, including His Majesty's. It says 6 harvest-grade cylinders left intact. The old barley clerk read, "Delivered sealed. Harvest grade. 6 cylinders." Felicienne touched the gray cylinder. "What arrived at my rail was not that gas." Castle's voice sharpened. "Additive altered weight. Her sample turned red in custody. After custody was attacked." Felicienne set out the density bell record, ascent, clock numbers, and dye-stained vial. The gas failed density before the dye appeared. Test bladders from 3 cylinders stalled below the second shaft mark without dye. The first balloon flashed red before this vial entered the testing room. A ministry chemist carried dye under his thumb. The chemist, held beside a guard wagon, lowered his head. The crowd changed then because sequence became plain. Felicienne unrolled the wind maps. Official logs said mild upper wind. The hidden barometer strip says storm pressure fell sharply. Corrected ascent rates show the balloons sat inside Dragon lightning height during patrol crossing. Those warnings should have stayed red. Pell Marwick shouted, "Ours came yellow." The widow raised her folded receipt. "Mine came too late." Felicienne accepted it. Crop loss coverage was offered to marsh road wheat before the public warning. The same timing appears in late barley and orchard basin districts. Insurance ratings rose after someone knew storm risk, before farmers were warned. An airship quartermaster pushed forward, pale under his cap. Factory output reports show full harvest grade production. Military delivery weights match the missing observatory batches, but the transfer orders came stamped through Weather Ministry supply clearance, not Fleet Command. Severan closed his eyes for one breath. When he opened them, the king had returned, but not the kind who could erase the man who had listened too late. "Castle Morn," he said, "you are removed from weather authority, insurance ratings, gas procurement, and crop assessments, pending public trial for endangering the harvest districts." Castle's last defense came sharp. "Your signature empowered every contract." "Yes," Severan said. "My signature opened the door. I will answer for that before them. Your office walked through it with false gas, false warnings, and private profit." He faced the farmers. "The military airship gas contract is canceled now. All harvest-grade cylinders return to civilian warning service. Every farmer harmed by delayed warning or red gas will be compensated from the Crown Treasury before insurance courts touch a claim. Every injured worker will be treated at royal expense. The observatory is restored." Castle laughed once. "Restored by royal mercy? Then it remains royal." Felicienne looked at Severan. She did not help him. This repair had to cost him. "Not by mercy," Severan said, "by law." He took the blank reverse of the festival proclamation and wrote on the scorched lectern, "No royal override of red crop warnings. No military claim on harvest-grade lifting gas during forecast season without independent observer consent. No insurance office may alter warning maps. Gas cylinders, ascent logs, and forecast records remain public after launch. The chief observer holds emergency warning command when Dragon lightning risk is present." He signed first. Then he pushed the pen toward Felicienne and stopped before touching her hand. "Will you witness that I signed it freely?" "Freely is not the same as sufficiently," she said. "I know." She signed as witness, not as forgiven woman. Orla signed. Bryn signed. Pell, the widow, the airship quartermaster, and 2 burned workers signed. Castle was taken from the field under guard, while weather dragons kept smoke high until red vapor thinned. Only after the main charge had ended did Severan step down and stand below Felicienne, lower by one full stare. "I will not ask what I have not earned," he said. "Good. The repaired authority is yours if you accept it." Felicienne looked across the valley where hail had silvered damaged barley, where farmers waited with burned hands and lifted faces, where the observatory ridge stood restored in law but not yet tested in weather. A king had grounded her truth. Now he offered warning command back before everyone he had endangered. She held the proclamation against the wind. "I will decide after the system survives the next storm." The next storm arrived 4 days later, without ceremony. By then, the observatory no longer looked seized. Ministry wax had been scraped from the wind desk. Every cylinder cradle bore a public batch card, copied in 3 hands where farmers could read it. Orla Dane supervised the filling lines. Bryn logged pressure and ink dried under witness sand. Felicienne accepted none of it as finished. She walked the ridge before dawn with her brass altimeter compass ticking at her waist, checking valves, weights, ascent cords, dragon flight lanes, and the slate where warning thresholds were written in plain language. Red warning meant red warning. No festival, fleet, insurer, or frightened king could soften it. Below, damaged fields lay in strips, barley silvered by hail, wheat beaten low, orchard leaves bruised black. Beside the lower road, Severin's treasury clerks paid farmers from open tables before insurance agents could speak. Burned workers received royal physicians and compensation writs with names written first, not usefulness. Severin carried water between the tables in a plain dark coat without his dragon pin. He did not come to the ridge until she sent for him. When he arrived, he stopped below the signal platform. The old instinct in him still wanted height. She saw him master it and remain one step lower. "The last replacement cylinder is sealed," he said. "Military airship stores have returned the harvest. Grade gas, the contract is void. Void contracts can be rewritten. Not under the new law without the observatory's public consent. The observatory is not me alone." "No," he said. "It is whoever holds warning command under the rules you wrote." She watched his face. Storm gray eyes, bronze skin, temple scar, pale against damp hair. That beauty had once arrived with an order that closed her door. Now it arrived with empty hands. "That is almost an answer," she said. "It is the answer I can enforce." The first full independent warning cycle began at sunrise. Felicienne sent Severan below with farmer witnesses, where he could hear every reading repeated without royal privilege. Bryn released the first verified test bladder in the draft shaft. It rose straight to the third mark in 11 seconds. Orla checked the cylinder neckband. Harvest grade, batch returned from airship store, seal uncut. The sky darkened over the western ridge. 3 royal weather dragons climbed into the storm wake, slate blue and silver bodies bright with pale lightning along their horns. Their cloud-white eyes turned toward Felicien's signal paddles, not Severin's horns. That mattered more than apology. "Launch one," Felicienne said. The white weather balloon rose from the rail with a clean, eager pull. No inner blush. No red veins. Its silk held pale against the charged sky as it crossed the dragon lightning layer. Lightning snapped between 2 clouds and grazed the storm wake around it. The balloon stayed white. A sound moved through the farmers below. Too low to be cheering, too heavy to be silence. Breath returning. Trust beginning where proof survived danger. Felicienne marked altitude, drift, pressure fall, and dragon path. The readings confirmed a fast hail cell moving toward late harvest east fields. She raised the red paddle. No one argued. Bryn rang the warning bell. Cooperative riders carried red flags down 3 roads. Weather dragons climbed high and west, pushing storm air toward the hills. Farmers covered wagons, moved livestock, and cleared workers from exposed terraces before hail reached them. When the storm broke, the late harvest fields were empty. Hail hammered the ridge, loud as thrown stones. The verified balloon strained but did not redden. Its tether held. Its record drum turned, writing truth into paper while no minister touched it. Only after the cell passed did Felicienne step down from the platform. Severin waited beside the tether post, rain running from his hair to his collar. The system survived the storm. The people survived because the warning arrived first. Yes, he did not reach for her. He did not turn repair into a plea. "I want your trust, Felicienne. I want more than permission to stand in the same field. But wanting has no authority." The words entered quietly because they asked nothing. She looked toward the valley. Covered wagons intact, farmers waving red flags in thanks, dragons circling above white balloon silk. The cost had not vanished. Burned scars would remain. Broken barley would not stand again. Her nameplate had been polished, but she remembered the notice that covered it. Still, repair was no longer only ink. "Tomorrow at dawn," she said, "we launch the 2nd cycle." His eyes lifted to hers. "You may hold the lower tether. Felicienne said. Only until I give the signal. If the wind shifts, you let go. A smile touched him, not victorious, almost disbelieving. Dismissible labor. Fully dismissible. At dawn, under a washed sky, Felicienne stood on the ridge with her hand above his on the tether. Severan waited below her, watching her signal instead of the crown's horizon. She opened her fingers. The white balloon rose through silver dragon light, steady, carrying the next warning before anyone had to burn to be believed.